Not so long ago I had my P38 in for an MOT and it failed on the front axle ball joints. Now a reputable, supposedly reputable tyre service company said they could fix it. I said to them that it needed a special tool to line the axle with the steering yoke, and they said no problem, we'll sort it out. And so they did the job, and they didn't do a very good job, because guess what's happened? The oil seal is now leaking and I'm going to have to sort it out. So my thoughts turn to what tools am I going to need to do this job. And looking at the workshop manual, there appears to be a tool, and I think it's called the LRT 54-06, which allows you to line up the steering yoke with the axle. The only problem with this tool, I'm sure it's a very good tool, is, for me anyway, it costs £1,000, and I'm not even sure you can get it. And in addition to that tool, you're going to need a tool to push the oil seal back into the cavity in the axle case. So, and that costs about 60 quid. So I was thinking about what sort of tool could I make that would replace those two tools. And I actually, by stroke of luck, and I've not done this before, so it may not work, but I'm pretty sure it will work. I've come up with an idea that actually give me two tools in one. And what I've actually done, what I thought would work, is I've got bought this taper bearing here, tapered needle bearing. There's the race, and there's the actual bearing itself. And if we just consider the tool that fits the oil seal into its cavity first of all, if I get hold of this is a brand new oil seal here for the axle case, and it goes in. If you can see here, there's a metal area here that fits in, and then you've got a rubber collar here that will face towards the wheel. So now this is about 65.3 millimeters in diameter, and I bought this wheel bearing, and this is just over 65. Now if you can see here, I can actually fit these two neatly together. The race goes straight over the rubber seal. It doesn't damage it. It's actually now up against the metal part of the bearing, so I should be able to use this race to actually knock the bearing straight into the axle case. So that's one tool sorted. Now the other tool is the one that's going to line up the axle, hopefully line up the steering yoke with the axle. And the idea I came up with that was to use this part of the bearing. You can see here, it's got a nice flat metal area here, and I'm pretty sure that's going to sit nice and snugly in the cavity that the oil seal sits into. And then my other idea was to get hold of a piece of aluminium. Now this aluminium is exactly the same diameter as the inside diameter of this bearing. In inches, it's actually 1.5 inches, but I think that translates to something like 38.1 millimeters. So my idea is to actually put that in there. Now I can't push it in at the moment, because as I said, the bearings the diameters are virtually identical. But the idea is to push that in there, and then with that flush against the axle casing, and hopefully this tube will then protrude through the middle of the axle yoke, and then I can raise and lower the yoke and measure between the top and bottom should get it absolutely perfectly in line. And if this works, it's going to cost me less than 20 quid for 2 tools and save me hopefully a whole bunch of money. So my next problem, not the next step really, is to get this in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this in the oven for about half an hour. I'm going to freeze this in the freezer for about half an hour, and then hopefully I'll be able to just slot the two in together and I'll get a nice tight fit that won't move, and I'll be able to use the tool. So see you in about half an hour, and we'll see if we can fit this piece into that piece. Right, welcome back. The bearing's been in the oven for about half an hour. The aluminium tube's been in the freezer for about half an hour. So here's the moment of truth. I've got everything ready over there on that table. I'll swing the camera around in a minute so you can see what I'm doing. I've wrapped the aluminium in a gel pack, so that's still keeping hopefully very, very cold. So right, I'm just going to get the oven gloves. Got the oven gloves, and now I'm guessing I've got to be really quick with this, because for every second the bearing's out of the oven, it's going to start contracting again fairly rapidly. So I'm going to be very, very quick. So what I'll do is I'll just swing the camera around so you can see what I'm doing. There you go, that's all my bits and pieces on the table. You can see there's 2 bits of wood there which I've used just so that I can knock it through to the main block of wood underneath. Right, here goes. Put that on there. See if this goes in. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Didn't even have to knock it in. Right, well that worked absolutely perfectly. As you saw, I didn't even have to knock it in, although I brought a hammer. Just going to let that cool down. Now the next thing I'm going to need to do, because although I've got a tool there, I don't actually have any means of fixing it so it's going to be nice and rigid up against the inside the axle casing. So my thoughts are to drill a hole through the centre of the through the tube, perhaps I don't know, a couple of inches away from the bearing, and then I'm going to put a metal rod through, and in a vertical plane I'm going to tie it with a couple of straps around the axle case. That should hold it nice and snug and tight into the axle casing. Hopefully it won't, and it'll also stop it from moving in a vertical plane once it's in there. And then with the tube through the steering yoke, should be able to make the adjustment, and hopefully the axle will all be lined up beautifully. So the next video, I'm actually going to see if this tool works, and hope to see you then. Cheers, bye.